I am using a 4.5mm hook, but you use whatever hook and yarn is good for your project. I use all of my pattern samples to be washcloths, so that is what I'm making here. And this is a reversible pattern. It is worked up similarly to the shell pattern, but instead of doing 5 double crochets to make a shell, we're going to do 3 puff stitches to make a shell. But the rest of the pattern is worked very similar to the shell pattern if you've done that before. We're going to start with a slip knot. And then you need to chain a multiple of 6 plus 2. So I'm doing 38 because that makes a good size washcloth. But you chain whatever number you need for what you're making. For row 1, I like to do a row of single crochet. This is not part of the pattern. This is just setting up the project so you have a nice edge to start those puff stitches, which do stretch your chains out quite a bit. So I'm just going to do a single crochet in every stitch, and here I'm going through the back bump, but you can go through your chain whichever way you prefer. The Lotus stitch that we do, because it's 3 puff stitches in 1 stitch, it stretches that chain out so much that I think it really misshapens your project. And so by doing the row of single crochet, you've got a pretty nice base to start with. It's still going to stretch out a little bit, but not quite as bad. For row 2, we're going to start the actual pattern. So chain 1, turn your work, and put a single crochet in the first stitch. And then we're going to skip 2 stitches. And then we're going to do a lotus stitch. So to do the lotus stitch, it's just a puff stitch. So yarn over, insert, yarn over, pull through. You have 3 loops. Yarn over, insert your hook, yarn over, pull through. You now have 5 loops. And then yarn over, insert your hook, yarn over, pull through. You have 7 loops. And then to complete the puff stitch, yarn over, go through all but 1, and then yarn over and pull through to lock that puff stitch in. And then we're going to chain 1, and we're going to repeat that process. The chain 1 between the first and second puff stitch is extremely important. If you forget those, which I have, your entire project is going to be messed up and nothing is going to line up right. None of your stitches are going to be where they need to be. So make sure when you're doing the first puff stitch and the second puff stitch that after you do that yarn over and lock it in, you need to do a chain 1. Sometimes it's easy to forget to do the chain 1 because your hand just kind of feels like it did that chain 1 right here where you're locking it in. But you need to do the chain 1 after that. So now we're going to do our 3rd puff stitch. When you complete that 3rd puff stitch, you do not chain 1 at the end of it. That lotus stitch is now completed. So skip 2 to complete the 6 stitch pattern and then begin repeating the pattern again with starting with the single crochet. And then repeat the pattern till you get to the end of the row. And when you get to the end of the row, we will put a single crochet in the last stitch after your second skip 2 to keep the project balanced. You can do this pattern in the round by having your initial foundation round be a multiple of 6. There's no need to do the +2 for that. As long as your base starts with a multiple of 6, just do your 6-stitch pattern. And then, so when your first row starts with a single crochet, then that row or that round will end with your skip 2, which is the end of your 6-stitch repeat. And then your next round will just need to start in the middle of your 6-stitch repeat to keep the pattern going. And I may do a quick video at some point showing this stitch in the round. It's pretty easy, but it's a little bit more complicated to explain without showing it. So for row 3, we're going to chain 1, turn our work. And to keep all of these lotus stitches balanced, you need to start this row with 2 puff stitches instead of 3 for the lotus, because otherwise it makes the edge bump out too much. So do 2 puff stitches, do your chain 1 in the middle of the first and second one. And then when you end the second puff stitch, you're not going to do chain 1 because it is the end of this lotus stitch. So we don't chain 1 at the end, and then you just do your skip 2 and then start your pattern with your single crochet. And then because you started the row with 2 puff stitches, we will then end the row with 2 puff stitches. You always start and end the row the same way, and that's what keeps all of the lotus stitches lined up, staggered in between each other. And I'm at the end of the row, so I'm going to do the skip 2 and do 2 puff stitches. So we're only doing a partial lotus stitch. And at the end of the second puff stitch, just like in the beginning, you're not going to do the chain 1 after you lock it in. However, because this is the end of the row, you will do a chain 1 to turn, just like you do at the end of every row. So you are going to do a chain 1, but it's for the next row. So now you're just going to repeat rows 2 and 3 for the rest of your project. Remember to always start and stop your rows the same way. So if your row starts with a single crochet, it ends with a single crochet. If it starts with the 2 puff stitches, it's going to end with the 2 puff stitches. And because I'm using this sample as a washcloth, I'm going to end now. I usually like to have them around an 8x8 or something close to that. So I'm just going to end. And because the row that we began with is a pretty tight row, I want it to look the same on the other end. And so I'm going to do a row of single crochet. You can also do a row of slip stitch if you prefer that look. It just gives the edge a nice tight look. So if you're doing a blanket or a scarf with this, you really want to do this because the spaces between the lotus stitches are very stretchy and wide, and your project, especially if you have a blanket or a scarf, is going to stretch out really bad. So if you put this extra kind of border edge around the top, it's going to keep all of those lotus stitches tighter, and it's just going to make it look better. But it's optional if you don't want to do this. It's not really part of the pattern, but it's just something I like to do to finish this pattern off.